Hello, everyone. Today is a very special day. I have a guest for you who name is Nicole Cherie Hesse. She is a multimillionaire who made her first million within 13 months of starting her own business, who has now released her first fiction novel that actually ties into her greater purpose, helping people shift out of self-sabotage and into self-sovereignty. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Shiloh. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. And so you might be wondering, how does Nicole attach into my mission of helping women have a real life love story. Well, Nicole has been through some major hardship in her relationships and wants to help other women break free. So I'm going to let her tell the story of what she's went through and what she wants to offer to women in situations like she's been in.
Well, first of all, I do have the love story of all love stories. I am with a beautiful man now. We've been together for 6 years, and we actually met on a dating app, and it was like literally whirlwind romance, love at first sight. We got together very, very quickly. We actually were engaged. He proposed to me on a surprise trip flown first class over to Greece. He proposed to me in Santorini, and we've been together ever since, and it is an absolutely beautiful relationship, but it wasn't always this way. Prior to this man, I've been in, some really, really challenging domestic abuse based relationships where there was physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual abuse. And it was a really challenging life to live. And when I was in it, I definitely didn't think that there was any way out. I did try and take my own life twice. And he did almost kill me once. And it took a lot of self-worth work to become the kind of person who, after a relationship like that, could believe that love existed, could have the hope that's required in order to activate a new relationship, and to be able to become the kind of person who could trust myself to choose after choosing such a terrible man. It was a really challenging piece of my life, and I'm very happy and grateful to be on the other side. And so, in writing this novel, I want more people to be on the other side. I want more people to be in loving, healthy, happy relationships. And so, even though this is a fiction novel, it is really designed to, kind of pull at your red flag awareness and help you to start discerning some of the early signs of abuse so that you can leave, so that you can, create a higher and better life for yourself in the process. And so, I've built out this incredible business. I have this great platform full of hundreds of thousands of women that I've helped to, shift out of self-sabotage and into self-sovereignty. But it's really been, quite the journey to get into that higher purpose and become the kind of person who can advocate in this way. Because of course, it's very challenging to live your life talking about, the abusive part of your life.
Yes, it's so wonderful. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is that I have women coming to me who want to fix their marriages. And that's what I do, help them fix their marriage. But there are some people whose marriages cannot be fixed. And what I've noticed is that the women who are in, I guess, what I call normal problems, there's emotional disconnect, there's miscommunication, it still feels very bad. It still can be a nervous system shutdown in these normal problems. But the women who are in the abusive relationships think that they're the same as the other women and they come to me for help. And I'm so disheartened because I don't want to give them the bad news. And also, they cannot really hear the bad news. And so that becomes a very challenging part. And I would love to hear you speak on why is it that they don't really see it, and how can they help to recognize that this relationship is not the normal problems that we can fix through, just better communication and self-healing and advocating for yourself.
I mean, I think the line of abuse is a really hard line to draw because it is very subjective in what we allow ourselves to tolerate, right? And I know that for me personally, because I do think it is a very personal decision, I mean, I obviously let this go way, way too far. And, why did I do that? Well, simply because I believed that I deserved the abuse, right? And so nobody gets punched in the face on the first date. That's not how that goes. This man showed up on a white horse. He was amazing. He was everything that I wanted him to be. It felt like star-crossed lovers under the moon. And like, my whole life was like amazing for that first couple of months. And so I fell in love with who I thought he was. And so I spent the rest of our relationship trying to be the kind of person that would bring out that side of him again. And so because I had seen it, because I had experienced it, I was addicted to it, and I would do anything to try and recreate it. And of course, he was a smart cookie, right? And so, he would give it back to you in just a couple couple days of bliss, right? And so, you didn't realize the abuse level because you were so obsessed with trying to create the love story over and over again that you tolerated the abuse in between. You believed the abuse was your fault or, deserved in some way. But at the end of the day, this man was not who he said he was. And I think that that's something that's really hard for people to hear. But, if you're in a relationship with somebody who is pretending to be someone else, this is a big red flag. And a lot of people can't see that when it's actually happening, right? But after the fact, you'll have that hindsight and you'll be like, oh yes, he was absolutely just pretending. And so the abuse really kind of starts in that realm of self-awareness, right? Where we start to realize like, oh, this person is not who they say they are. And that disassociation that happens for them when they're just pretending to be what you want them to be, that makes it impossible for you to work on a relationship because there isn't a relationship. The only relationship that exists is the one in your own mind, because they are not in a relationship with you. They are using you for whatever their supply is, and you are creating a relationship in your own head. So therefore, there's nothing to work on.
Isn't that the saddest part? I always feel like just the harbinger of bad news because she's like, I just want, him to do this and I want to connect with him and all the normal things, the feminine desires. I want attention, I want time, I want romance. And I'm like, that is a higher order desire. Right now, you are not even getting the basic respect. You're not safe,
You're not even
right?
safe.
You're not even safe emotionally, physically, financially. Like you're in a risky scenario and you know it because you're afraid of him, like really afraid, right? And so I love the opportunity to talk about these nuances because I don't want people to use my real love method on these men because they might get worse. They probably will.
They
Because I'm
will.
going to teach you to live your own life. I'm going to teach you to set boundaries. I'm going to teach you to have this powerful sovereignty, which is very attractive to healthy men. They love it. They're like, oh, look at you, like, living your best life. But a dangerous man is going to smell immediately that you are getting some freedom and double down on you. And so I'm really happy to have you here and supporting those women to come out of this fog. So how does this book do that? Because I know you said it's not self-help. This is like a fiction novel. So tell me a bit more about it.
I find that for me, definitely, and a
Mm,
lot of the women that I have helped, is that when you're in an abusive relationship, you don't actually want help. And I know that's a weird thing to say because you're like, of course they want help. No, they don't. Because if they did, they wouldn't be in the situation in the first place. You don't feel like you deserve help. And so doing a self-help book means that it would never get picked up on the shelf. Right. You would not go into a bookstore
mm,
if you're in an abusive relationship and buy a book called, Get Out of Abusive Relationships for Dummies. You would never do that because one, you don't acknowledge that you're in one, and two, because it's a danger for you to start bettering yourself in such a way where he could transparently see that you're onto him. That would cause things to get worse. And so because this is a fiction book, men are typically not paying attention to the realms of our
yeah,
fantastical romances that we live in, right?
right.
And so because it is a fiction book, it looks and reads like a fiction book. This is a safe book for people who are in abusive relationships to read without triggering all of the red flags for their abuser to know what's going on, right? And so through the exploration of these three characters, through three soul life journeys, you're actually getting to experience secondhand, right? What's happening in abusive relationships. And so, it's kind of like giving yourself osmosis style learning, right? Like the best lessons we've ever learned are the ones that we already learned the hard way, our past selves, right? I learned this lesson the hard way. Let me let you into my story so that you can learn the lesson the hard way through me instead of having to create a terrible, violent, scary situation for yourself to realize how bad it actually can get. Because it does, it can turn dark very, very quickly. And I mean, even if you feel like you're kind of safe and you're like, well, no, he would never. I promise you, if he can hit you, he can kill you. I promise you. It is literally one argument away.
It's so brilliant that you've created a fiction for this because, yeah, I always say, don't let him see this book that I'm suggesting you. Make sure you hide it. But I know that in the high times when he's buttering her up, she's going to talk and she's going to share it all. And then she's going to be buried because now he knows, right? And so I'm always like, oh, how can I protect you when I know that you're still caught in that liminal space of, I want to trust him, but I'm scared of him? because in that space you're going to still beginning to reveal yourself. So I love that it's fiction. And also what I sometimes say to them is I say, just imagine that your daughter was in the kind of relationship you're in and you knew every detail about it. What would you say to them? And they're always like, oh my God, like never, never, because their worthiness for their daughter is 100%, right? That girl should have the best things. She should have a man who appreciates her and loves her and protects her. And they can see without a shadow of a doubt that that would be never okay for their daughter. But as soon as the mirrors turn back on them, they're like, well, but it just kind of wobbles. It's like I can't really see the same thing. So I love that you've done that. And the other question I wanted to ask is I know how women tend to go back to their abuser, right? Because they get out and it's an addictive cycle and they go back and they go back. And I don't blame them because I understand how this goes psychologically. But what a lot of the women I speak to say, like, well, I don't want to be alone. Like, I don't want to be a single mom. I don't want to just leave this person. Plus, he might like chase me and like try to get me back and be mean to the kids. And they have all these fears of what would happen if they actually walked out the door. And you said like now you're in an amazing relationship. So I would love to know one, how did you wake up? How did you go like I cannot do this anymore. Something has to change when you were at such a low self-worth point in your life, and then go all the way to magnetizing and choosing a truly wonderful and healthy relationship.
Well, I mean, I would love to tell you some beautiful story about how one day I just opened my eyes and became a different person, but that's not what happened. I mean, quite honestly, I got lucky in a lot of ways. I put myself in a terrible situation. I got onto a flight and went to Bangkok with this man, which was a terrible idea, right? In a country where you don't have, legislation that's going to support this and you are not supported by the law, it's very dangerous to put yourself into these kinds of situations where there's nobody, you have no friends and family, you have no resources in this country, including not having the resource of police. And so when we were in Bangkok, we were in a hotel room and things turned nasty as they frequently did. And it was not a surprise, right? But this time it got really out of hand. And so, when I mean, I think he kind of had a license to go a little further because he knew that he wasn't really going to get in trouble, right? And so I was bleeding. I managed to get out of the hotel room and I thought, okay, someone will save me. And I could not be more further from the truth of what actually happened. The hotel security actually they took my passport and brought me back to this man and said, you will listen to your husband. And it seems like you need to calm down, and left me in the hotel room and locked me in there with him again. So now I have no phone, no wallet, no passport, and I'm locked in a hotel room with this monster. And he nearly killed me. I mean, I was bleeding from the back of my head. My ribs were crushed back in. He had both of his hands around my throat, and he was just roaring with rage. And I had that moment where, your whole life flashes before you. And, being someone who did try and take my life twice before this happened, that second where I saw my kids' faces, right? And that thought that, like, oh my God, I'm never going to see them again, right? That fear that grips you from the inside in that moment, it cured me of any suicidal tendencies I would ever have again. It just took it all away because, I realized how precious life is, right? And in that moment, I did everything that I could. I fought, and I don't really know what happened. I don't know how it stopped. It was such a gray moment, right? But it did stop, and I woke back up. Like I must have passed out. I think this, the things like I passed out and I woke up on the floor. And at that point, like he was out of the hotel room. He'd shredded all my clothes and like literally like with a knife, like ripped my clothes to shreds. So I had no clothes to wear. I couldn't like leave the hotel room. And I did terrible things to get back on American soil. I did everything he wanted me to do, which was terrible things. And once I got home, I got myself into a courtroom and I went and applied for a restraining order, which was denied. And it was unbelievable. It was so hard to get into that courtroom. It was so hard to make myself go and then to be denied. I mean, it was just I just wanted to like fall down on the floor and cry right then and there, right? I mean, I was so angry and so upset at our judicial system. And it was so disheartening. And I my best friend helped me and I went back again and got denied again. And at this point he was very much on to me and it was a very dangerous time. And so when we're talking about leaving, like I want to remind you that when you're trying to leave, it is the most dangerous time of your relationship. And so you really do need external support for this. You need other people to advocate and to know what is going on. And so I had a friend who his wife worked at the police department. And she went in with me. And the only reason I got a restraining order was because of her. But then I have to remind you that a restraining order is just a piece of paper. And he walked right through it. And he ended up, I got lucky. He ended up getting charged with some financial crimes. His boss actually turned him in for something that kind of like a minor thing that had happened, but she had like an inclination that there was more to the story, and so she turned this into the cops. They started doing some investigation, and it actually got the federal investigation became involved at this point, which they investigated me. um it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying to go through because I mean they were like, kind of in dark movie kind of rooms of like shining a light in your face, like where were you Friday night? I mean, it was really, really intense. And I was terrified I was gonna lose my kids. Right. And it was through that process that I started to really see, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't realize how bad this was. I didn't realize how deep I was in this. And luckily, because it is luck to a certain extent that he did get caught, they charged him with 16 felonies. And I had to testify, which was really hard and really scary because it's not like I got to testify in a separate room. I had to testify in front of him. And so I had to be up on the stand, literally 5 feet away from him, saying all of these things to a judge and jury. And it was really intense and really scary. And when I got out of that, he ended up getting charged with two of the 16 felonies because that's how it typically goes. Um, but the having two puts you on the three strikes you're out kind of thing. And so that is what saved me. The first judge that he had only sentenced him to 30 days. And his lawyer appealed and did all the things the DA rather appealed and did all the things. And so he ended up getting locked up for 90 days. The second judge put an additional sentence on there for him that was really for me. And so in that 90 days, I could not believe how much my mind like unwound all of the crazy because you need 90 days no contact to really understand how much this person is impacting you. I didn't realize that I had literally replaced the voice in my head with his voice. It was so detrimental to my psyche, but that 90 days is what saved me because that 90 days is what gave me the clarity. I couldn't go back because he was locked up, right? And so in
Mm-hmm.
that 90 days, I was able to create enough distance that my brain literally started to repair and heal enough where when he did get out, I did uphold the restraining order and I didn't go back. And I did get the advocacy that I needed during those 90 days to make sure that I was safe from him when he did get out.
Wow. Wow. So devastating that you couldn't get a restraining order more easily. And then, yeah, making that happen, so many different events. And that's the part where it's like when I'm trying to help women to see that this is not going to get better, I know that their path forward is not straight, right? I'm not going to sell them the fantasy of like, oh, you just get out and then you'll feel like $1 million. It's like, this is the part is that now you've lost your faith in men. You've lost your faith in your ability to choose a good man. You are feeling so wounded and lost. Like you said, your internal critic is him saying like you're not good enough and no one's ever going to love you like I loved you or whatever he's going to say. How did you make that next leap from like I'm just barely able to not return to an abuser to now I'm choosing healthy love for myself?
I mean, I think that there's something in understanding that it's not that you have to be alone, it's that you get to be. And you get to really know yourself in a completely different way. And I spent a lot of time with myself by myself. And that was really important because, as someone who became a mom at 19, I've never been alone my whole life, right? Like I've always been, with some guy and definitely always had the kids. And like at this point, my husband and I had divorced. And so he had the kids 3 days a week. And during those 3 days a week, I learned how to be alone. I learned how to feel my own feelings. I learned how to be in my house with it being quiet. Silence used to be the scariest thing in the world for me because in the silence I could hear my own thoughts, right? And so I needed to really learn how to feel my own feelings, how to think my own thoughts. I needed to learn who I was and why my life mattered. I needed to be able to build up my own self-worth, and I had to do that without the help of a man, without the external validation of someone telling me I'm pretty today, right? Like I needed to believe that my life was worth living even if it was alone. And I needed to make peace with that. And I did. I learned how to feel my feelings. I have a proprietary mindset tool that I teach to my clients. It's called the 7 layer transformation that helps you to, identify and shift any self-sabotage pattern into self-sovereignty. And it really starts with, feeling your feelings. And for me, that was the first time in my life that I ever did feel my feelings. And because I was so good at numbing, I was so good at pushing them away and compartmentalizing and pushing down deep and never talking about it again. And because I didn't have those coping skills before, I was a really great match for abusive partners. And so I really needed to become the person who was responsible for my own thoughts and feelings. And that did not happen overnight. And I got to tell you, my husband was not the next guy that I dated. After I was with this guy, I chose another, would be abusive a partner. But what happened in this is that the very first time that he pulled anything, I left. And I needed that. I needed to practice. It sounds terrible, but I
No, I
needed
get
to
it.
practice leaving.
Yeah.
I wasn't good at leaving people. I wasn't good at walking away when I knew I should. And so this guy was really, really nice in the beginning, as they all are.
Hmm.
And then, there was a day where like I did something that I wasn't supposed to do. I made a mistake about whatever. I don't even remember what it was because it was so minuscule. And we were in a parking lot at my job and he started to yell at me and his hand went up. And I was like, no. And my best friend was there and she was like, no. Like we literally like I kicked him out of my life and I never talked to him again. Like that was literally the end of it. And like I just didn't tolerate anything. I needed to become the person that was so rigid in that I had higher level of standard and requirement. And there was so much power in walking away from that guy and just saying, I'm not doing this anymore. Right. And so from there, the relationships started to improve. And it was something, not just my relationships with men, but like my relationships in my life started to improve because I had a higher level of requirement for myself and what I would tolerate and what I wouldn't. And that sense of self-worth grew because what we focus on expands.
I love that story. You can see that's the moment where you fully stepped into that identity of I'm not a woman who gets hit in relationships. I have this exercise with my clients, boundary standards and desires, and I say your boundaries are the things that actually never happen to you. They're the things that actually don't occur, right? So if your
Yeah.
husband has never cheated on you and never hit you, that's because you got a real boundary. You never would pick a guy like that and you'd be gone if he did it. So when you have those things don't occur in your life. And what's interesting, you talked about being alone and being with your feelings. And it's a similar process that I teach wives to do when they're married. I'm like, you have been relying on his reflection of who you are. You have been feeling his feelings. He's always unhappy. And why can't he be happy with me? And I'm never good enough and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, what do you think about you? What's your identity? And what are your standards that you are tolerating and accepting? Right. So I'm like, we can move this whole house so that the basement's the boundaries. You can take some of those things that are normative in your life. For you, it was getting hit, that had become a standard. People would hit you, and you speak to women and they'll go, all guys cheat. And I go, I got a lot of friends who know that is absolutely not the case,
Yeah.
myself and many included. But because their standard and their experience of the mothers and sisters and everyone in their world is that all men cheat, they just tolerate it because they think if I don't let men cheat, I can't have a man because all men cheat, right? And so I sometimes love using these examples of people who have very different standards than you that you can point at and go, well, that's a false standard. That's not, you don't need to have that standard to have a relationship. And then women can also find themselves without leaving because I think it's very hard for us to hold our sense of sovereignty while a man is in our house. Like we're always, what's he doing? How's he doing? Especially if you had any lack of health in your childhood. Um, but I just want to really emphasize this because if your relationship is safe, you can use that as a container to find yourself. This man's not going anywhere. He's providing financially. I can go and spend time with myself. I can do the things that support me. It's okay if he doesn't like it. He's not going to go crazy. He's not going to hurt me. And I can tolerate his discomfort. But I think so many women feel like that is a death. And I guess it is a kind of ego death that I should have to hold my own emotions and someone else is not going to make me feel good. Someone else is not going to tell me that I'm good enough or that I'm beautiful or wanted. And even I remember when I did this work for myself, it was very lonely work. Like it was not fun. But the power that I now have, that I know who I am and I could ask for what I want, and tolerate if it's a bit rocky or whatever is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I totally understand that feeling.
Yeah.
It was not easy. It was very challenging to be
Hmm.
alone, to feel alone, but like
Hmm.
once you learn to not just love yourself, but actually like yourself, you realize how much you like being alone. Like
I
I love
know.
it now, right? I'm like, get away from me, right? Like I love being with myself, but because I love being with myself, other people love being with me because I'm not coming to a relationship from a space of deficit, expecting you to fill me up, right? I have already filled me up, so I don't need my husband, right? That neediness is not there. And so because I'm not needy, I'm wildly attractive to healthy partners, right? Only
Yep.
unhealthy partners are attracted to neediness.
That's exactly it. And it's that what's paradox of you get the thing when you don't need it anymore. Now that
Yes.
I'm not dying for my husband's attention, now that I'm like, oh my God, validate me, he's there, giving me attention and validating me.
Yeah, to the
But,
point where you're
right?
like, go away.
You're like, I got things to do. I gotta go see my girlfriends. I got work, whatever, right? And it's like the
Yeah.
whole thing shifts. And yeah, you get back yourself. I love being alone now too. I love having my own space. And I used to not at all. Always needed people around. Always needed company. Always needed somebody keeping me stimulated and up. And it's a kind of growing up. I think it's really coming into the adult woman. I call it like the matriarch. Like you're not just this little girl. You're not the princess. You're like, I am a leader in my realm emotionally. My kids can lean on me. My husband can have his own thing going on. I can have my own thing coming on. And, we come together in this mutual admiration and just appreciation. And it removes the anxiety of the little girl,
Yes.
right? Which is ever present, ever present. Like, oh, am I good enough? Am I cute enough? Did I wear the right thing today? Am I fitting in? Am I not too much or not enough? Always trying to toe that line. Exactly. Oh, this has been so much fun talking about these things, even though they're heavy topics. I always like to say this healing journey can be fun, and there's lots of fun parts in it, even though you do get to sit with your discomfort a lot. So
Yeah.
tell us if you have any parting words for the people you would love to pick up this book and how they can find it.
Well, I would love for you to go to sothatwhat.org because what we're doing with this book is also creating this movement, right? Where we're helping people to shift beyond the parameters of the victim narrative, right? Because, one of the things about domestic violence and the reason why it continues over and over again, generational to generational, is because we're treating the symptom. We're constantly vilifying this man and saying, this is the monster. I mean, every fairy tale, right, has the monster. And so we're vilifying this monster instead of really addressing the root cause, which is the worthlessness itself. And that worthlessness comes from the little girl mentality. It comes from that victim. And, we had movements like Me Too, which I think was very important for us to all get up and say these things and to, address the fact that abuse is more prevalent than anybody really wants to admit. But then after Me Too, we very much moved into survivorship. We are not meant to live in survivor mode. That is exhausting. That is not a life worth living. That is not what we desire. I mean, as women, I mean, do you want to be in survival all
Yeah.
day long, every day in hypervigilance? I don't want to be there, right? And so I don't want women to be defined by their abuse by saying, I'm a survivor, I'm a warrior. I'm glad that you survived because a lot of women did not. Let's address that, right?
Absolutely.
But, moving to the other side of this, there's so much more to your life than being a survivor and being only relevant because somebody abused you. So that what is asking you a very challenging question, right? A very uncomfortable question is like, you were a victim of domestic violence and you survived. So that what? So that you could repeat it again, so you could go choose another guy just like this, so that you could teach this to your children? No, so that you can do better, so that you can create the higher and better in your life. You can become that next version of yourself. And so this is what I'm really asking of society is can we move beyond survivorship and into choosing self-sovereignty? Because I'm not going to give you a label after survivor because you get to choose your label. You get to say, I survived so that what? For me, so that I could create a happy, healthy relationship with a husband that I love and adore, so that I could become the mother that I always wanted to be, so that I could build a seven-figure business, so that I could write this book. What's yours? What's your so that what story? And so when you go to sothatwhat.org, you can come and be a part of that movement. You can share those stories and help the next generation to choose differently because abuse should not be a rite of passage. And that's sothatwhat.org. This is where you can pick up your copy of the book, and really kind of start this journey. And one of the things that I'm asking of every person that reads this is to understand that whether maybe you have never experienced domestic violence before, I guarantee you that you know someone who has, right? And so, not just in being able to identify these red flags for yourself, but to become a better advocate of understanding why people choose this in the first place and understanding that vilifying that abuser doesn't actually help the person who's in the relationship. If you want to help this person that you love who's being abused, the best thing that you can do for them is help them to build themselves up. Instead of attacking him and making every conversation about him, make every conversation about her and everything that you value in her, and give her a copy of this book and write a really great note about how amazing and how beautiful and how wonderful she is. Give her this book and let her read and let her experience how bad this can be, because this book is not a book about survivorship. This book does not have a happy ending. It doesn't romanticize domestic violence like a lot of the fairy tales do these days. It really shows you what can happen when you choose to stay in a very dangerous situation.
I love that. I love that we're moving out of the victim into I get to choose who I am now. And that's very much my message too, is I don't want to talk about men got to learn this and men got to learn that. That's not going to help us. We're not over there in his head, right?
Yeah.
Yes, men got their own movement. Let them do their own men's movement. Some of it's beautiful. I love some of it's weird. But we're over here as women going, what do I want and what can I create in my life? And you have so much power and influence over that question. So we just need to pour all our energy into that. Thank you so much for coming today, Nicole. I love this book. I'm definitely going to be recommending it to people and sharing it wide because the women who are in those situations need it so desperately. And again, the people who are friends with them need to be able to support them. It's very, very important. And I hope we can stay in touch and keep sharing this message.
Yeah. Thank you so much.